Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Healthy Planet, Healthy You. This is our fourth episode of a mini series all about the environmental health and how it impacts our health. And today's episode, we are going to talk about the health benefits of nature and also eco anxiety, which is a term some people might not be aware of, but we are going to get award-winning sustainability advocate to join us, Kane. She's been with us every week so far in July, and she's absolutely brilliant. And I think we all know that nature is healing, and we feel better after we've been outside for a while, or if the weather's good, or just get a break from the kind of overstimulation of day-to-day life. And I think it's really important to shine a light on how that positively impacts our health. So Pat is going to join us, just going to get her on now. When we think of eco anxiety, so a lot of people, it's kind of a modern day mental health issue, but there's Pat. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I am great, thank you. And thank you so much for joining us again this week.
Thank you.
And thanks to everybody who's tuning in on their lunch break. We are going to get straight into the topic, I think. Let's just get to it. So, Pat, I'm going to let you kind of introduce this idea of nature as beneficial for our health.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are very familiar that, being in nature, spending time out there, I suppose unplugging, switching off, whatever it is that we call, I think these things are really beneficial. We feel calmer and we feel more connected. We feel probably even a bit more focused. There's less distraction. So it is very positive to be out and about without the pressures of the day to day. Obviously, a privilege as well. We understand that. But it is really beneficial for everyone involved. However, the more time you spend out there, the more you realize that there are significant challenges out there happening around the world, right? So we're talking about environmental concerns, big climate change, I suppose, challenges. We're looking at people migrating because of climate disasters, droughts, or wildfires, or whatnot, losing their homes. So once you start learning, you start observing and really paying attention to what's going on out there when it comes to nature, environment, and whatnot, you know, you can feel a little bit more overwhelmed. And I suppose the conversation here today is really to try and find that key, that balance that is to manage your emotional overload when it comes to climate issues and whatnot. So I'm always saying that acknowledging your feelings without letting them overwhelm you is very positive, right? So we all feel a certain way when we watch the news, when we read about something, or when we hear about something that it's not so good. As a matter of fact, it's quite bad when it comes to environment, and that can lead to what's called eco anxiety. Yeah, we've heard that. A lot of us would have heard this before. If you have young kids or like teenagers even in school, it is a topic they do discuss, and they come home and they ask questions. And I feel like it really is important that, I suppose, to recognize that this kind of anxiety is very valid, is a very rational response to very real environmental issues and challenges that maybe our grandparents never had to face.
Yeah.
I don't know, you
Yeah,
know.
and I think to really mention here that it shows you care. If you are feeling worried, overwhelmed, and anxious, it's not that it's really a reaction to what's going on, and it's very justified and warranted. So to firstly say you should actually be quite proud of yourself because it shows you care. So kind of naming it as that first, I think, is a really big step.
Absolutely. Absolutely. As I said, I do think it's a very rational response, and it's very, very valid. So, I'm always, when I'm talking about eco anxiety with my own children or friends or at work, I feel like a very effective approach is really to shift from that passive worry to active engagement.
Yeah.
So, and what does that mean? That comes in several different forms. A very basic form would be very much to educate ourselves.
Yeah.
To try and figure it out what it is that I can do, what it is that the politicians in my country can do,
Mm-hmm.
or in my village, in my town, in my whatever it is, around me. What are the swaps, however small, what are the swaps I can make
Mm-hmm.
to do better as an individual? Can I join a local group, climate group, or even an online group? And I think I mentioned last week, Friends of Earth, brilliant group. They meet online every week, if I'm not mistaken. So, there are
I
ways for
have
you.
an email subscription you can sign up to as well,
Correct.
just to
Yeah.
stay informed and see what's happening in your area. And even if it's signing a petition, you can feel like you're actually taking part and doing something, and
Yeah.
which is brilliant.
Exactly. It is really to try and engage
Mhm.
with people who have similar concerns, but are doing something about it, because there's no point in us just sitting there like, oh my goodness, things are not going well.
Yeah.
And, so yes, we know that there are lots of challenges there. I always say this is a crazy and wonderful world, because there are horrific things happening, but there are incredibly special and magical things happening as well. So it's really trying to move away from just nagging, complaining, and feeling sorry for ourselves into action. So what
Yeah.
can I do? And I hear a lot, Liz, I'm sure you've heard that before, people saying, I was at an event the other day and it was hilarious because it was an environmental event, an award ceremony. And someone said, yeah, I'm a bit confused about this whole sustainability thing. Like, we're so small. Look at bigger countries out there. And I turned to this person who's a journalist and I said to him, but what's your alternative? Are you going to sit on your hands and watch everything go to, you
Mhm.
know, mm. And he looked at me and he's like, I suppose when you put it like this, it's like, yeah, you can choose to sit on your hands and just think someone will save you, but there's no white horse come to save you. So you do have to do something about it. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think it's getting away from that denial, but also accepting that we're not perfect either. So, we're not saying to people, become an eco warrior and like never leave any carbon footprint behind.
Mm,
We need
mm,
to be realistic, practical, and we're always looking for that balance. So if you try to implement something that's good for your environment, whether it's, recycling or trying to minimize single-use plastic, things we've spoken about in the last couple of episodes, and engaging with your local politicians, something small, but also if you fail at what you try the first time, don't give up, because every
that's
time
it.
we fail, we build resilience. And I
Yeah,
think it was Barack Obama, back in something like 2015, he was announcing his climate action plan, and he said, like, will our future generations, will they think we did enough? So it's not that we can do everything, but are we doing enough? You
yeah.
know?
There are like all these steps you mentioned, very important. And I feel like, okay, yes, you are one person, but think of the collective power of
Yeah,
joining groups and people who are like-minded and making, I suppose, waves, that collective action, I suppose, can create a very big sense of hope, a sense of agency, and yeah, we're only one, but together we can make a difference. I
yeah,
really believe that,
yeah,
no matter how small. And yeah, like it is about trying to figure out what works for you, what the, like we go back to the audit to, what can I do today if I'm to go back to work, go back to, my children or whatever it is, home, what is it that your big challenges are? What are your big challenges? And trying to figure out how can I do better then?
yeah.
Because again, as you said, we're not going to be able to do everything, but we
Yeah.
can certainly do something.
And I
It's
think,
not a
yeah, also like acknowledging that we can't get rid of this problem. Like the amount of carbon already in our atmosphere is there. Like we're not at the beginning of this story. I was
yeah,
listening to a podcast earlier about it, and it's so interesting. Like we're already halfway through, so we can't delude ourselves, but we can't avoid the topic either because it is happening. The facts are very clear and they're very scary. So as we said, like to feel overwhelmed and anxious is completely warranted, but you have to navigate through it. And the
Mm.
more we come together and have these conversations, join groups, start small in your own community, and then maybe look at a wider kind of planetary scale eventually. We can be so connected with social media. So we have a
Mhm.
voice, like even today, like where are you today? We're miles
Yeah.
apart. Um, you know,
Exactly. What I would say, Liz, also is very important. Like, we must educate ourselves. Absolutely. Nobody's coming to educate us. That's the bottom line. Not the government, not anyone else. It is a bit of I suppose a heavy responsibility for the individual. And yes, we acknowledge that. Although personally, I would much rather if organizations and governments got together and were like, right, we're going to do better. So whenever it gets to you, individual, there are better alternatives out there, better ways of doing whatever it is that we have to do, commuting, flying, or whatever it is. But a lot is left to the individual. And I agree, this is a very heavy burden.
yeah,
One thing that I would say is while we educate ourselves, while we are observing the news, reading books, speaking to different people, set some healthy boundaries.
yeah,
There's a lot of distressing news out there. And the reality is, every single day, if you want, you will find more and more distressing news. I
mm,
read a book called An Uninhabitable Earth, The Uninhabitable Earth. Fantastic book. I think should be mandatory for schools. And that book paints a very tough picture at first, but then it talks about solutions because believe it or not, the solutions that we need are already out there.
yeah,
They're just not being implemented at scale as fast as they should be, or even put out there for the wider audience, public I suppose, take advantage of. So the reality is you can overwhelm yourself by educating yourself a lot by reading news, by watching TV and whatnot. So it's also important to set some healthy boundaries. I understand there is a problem. I understand there are certain things I won't be able to do. However, let me focus on what I can do. It's
yeah,
not about, destroying our hope and our faith in humanity. Absolutely not. It's about understanding enough so we can make better choices. We can live in a world that's a bit more mindful,
yeah,
and even I've met people who found therapists that are very well, I suppose, very literate in this whole climate side of things. And it's important if you feel like you need that, if you feel like this is something that would benefit you, why not?
yeah,
And you have access to it, most importantly.
yeah,
But, setting a healthy boundary and knowing that you can only do your best. And
yeah.
if you are doing your best, wow, if we were all doing our best collectively, wouldn't that be wonderful?
Yeah, yeah, no, it's so true. And I think a lot of the people who are really feeling this overwhelm at the moment are the younger generations and parents of younger children as well, who kind of are worrying about the future that we're going to provide for our kids. Um, but I think if people could start having those conversations with their children around the dinner table, as a family coming together, because I read there recently, there was a study of about 10,000 young people in the UK, and 48% of them, which is nearly half of them, said that when they brought up the issue of feeling anxious or worried about the climate change, they felt dismissed. And I think that's the problem there. Like, I think just having these conversations and acknowledging that it's real, because otherwise younger people are like, they're going to lose trust and faith in the older people who they believe should be protecting them and keeping them safe. And this is a safety issue in our world. And so having the conversations, don't be afraid to have it. And it's harder for older generations to kind of accept that this is a bigger issue without feeling a bit guilty sometimes. So leave that, like draw a line and start from today.
Yeah. Liz, I will also say to you, I was chatting to someone a few months ago, and this person asked me, who are your climate heroes? And, I didn't want to say like anyone that's so famous or has a massive platform because they're really not my heroes. They're doing what they can do and it's great, fair play to them. My hero is what you said, it's an older generation and I've met so many, older humans, women, men, whatever, and saying to me, I know I'm not going to be around forever. none of us will really,
Yeah.
but they are closer to their, I suppose, time. And saying, but I'm doing this because I have grown kids, or I'm doing this because of the generations that are coming after me.
Mm.
These are my heroes. It's the guys who work in waste collection. It is the teacher who is trying harder to explain what is it that's going on out there in a not overwhelming, heavy burden way, in a very healthy way. It's the parent that is choosing to, bring kids to a supermarket and say, folks, are we buying these bananas in plastic bags or the naked bananas? Which one? And asking the kids, but why did you choose the one that has no plastic bag? And, and trying to embed little nudges of environmental activism, let's say,
Yeah.
into their routine. So these are the real heroes. It's you, it's I who are trying a little bit better every day, knowing very well that like my family lives across the ocean and I want to visit them. I have to fly, I can't swim.
Yeah.
So, so knowing that these things will happen, but what can I do? What else can I do?
Yeah.
So I feel that, it's finding that little hero in you, that is the day-to-day hero, nothing major, no capes, no, superpowers involved, just really trying our best. And I
Yeah.
feel like when you know that you are doing that sort of thing, you are managing that emotional overload, that
Yeah.
overwhelm that comes with climate anxiety,
Yeah.
every day a little bit more.
Yeah, brilliant. And on the note of overwhelm and anxiety in general, we are going to move on to the topic of the healing benefits of nature itself. So, from a point of view of mental health and our mental well-being, getting outside into nature, listening to the birds, looking at the waves. There's nothing like if I'm stressed about something, if I can get on top of a mountain anywhere or a small hill in Ireland, they're not that big, but it just there's something so it puts things in perspective. It helps with mental clarity. It literally reduces cortisol and reduces stress, can lower blood pressure, can lower heart rate. It's absolutely amazing. But even in your back garden or driving somewhere, like some people say, I'm not able to walk anymore, like due to illness or health issues, you know, rolling down the window, driving somewhere by the sea or into a park or something and listening, just listening and stopping and pausing. And we're always so connected with our phones and it can be brilliant, but also I think we need to disconnect from them to connect with nature and connect to ourselves.
I completely agree. You are speaking my language. I feel like a walk at lunchtime has incredible benefits. I feel like, as you said, listening to the waves, how wonderful is that? Or just sitting outside, observing at a park, at the top of a mountain, if that's, or a hill, whatever it is, a little mount,
Mhm.
and whatever it is that you can find. I went through a rough patch going through hormonal replacement and whatnot, perimenopause, and my GP, who is a fantastic woman, recommended me to just walk and recommended me try some yoga meditation outside if you can, just there. It's free. It's fully free.
Mhm.
It's accessible to most of us, I guess, and I can safely say, wow, it made a world of difference. So much so that it became part of my day today.
Yeah,
My daily routine, it's a lunchtime walk, 20 minutes, whatever I can fit in,
yeah,
but scheduling like a meeting. I feel like that's really important because we tend to take time. And like as a mom of two young children, I tend to take time to, do the homework with them, pick them up, bring them up to somewhere, da 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 da, all of those things. And when I look, it's like 8 o'clock. And you're like, oh my goodness. And then I didn't finish work. I have to cook, do the laundry, blah, blah, blah. So I need to schedule. I
yeah,
feel like that's a great tip. In my calendar, it's 20 minutes, a block at lunchtime. And this is my moment. If
yeah,
I'm exhausted, if it's pouring rain outside and I don't feel like going, that's fine. But I disconnect, leave the phone behind, go for a walk around the house even, doesn't matter,
yeah,
but just spending time in silence by myself, wonderful. And I feel
yeah.
like if I can be in nature, even better.
Yeah, and for anybody living like in a city, like I'm actually home in the countryside at the moment, which is fabulous, but I live in an apartment in the city. So you can bring nature into your home as well. Like I don't know how many plants I have, and some of them die, but I try my best to keep them alive. But even the patience to nurture a plant, as simple as that is, it might only need some water every 2 weeks. But you kind of appreciate the growth and the slowness of it all as well. It does help you
Exactly.
slow down. So whether it's putting up a poster on your wall of a picture of a forest, or listening to sounds on Spotify of the ocean before bed to unwind you. Like there are ways to do it, even if you're in an urban environment.
I love that, Liz. I do work with wave sounds and whatnot. I just feel like I need to concentrate, and that little white noise at the background, in
Mm,
the background, is so great.
yeah.
So I completely agree. And on the plants, I'm with you. I try my best, and I have so many. It's not funny, Like I can't go to a nursing, a nursery or something that I'm like go crazy.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. And then when we think about our health, and a lot of people struggle with sleep at the moment, but when we think about nature, it actually can be so, so important for our sleep. And so everything from our circadian rhythm, which is actually our natural body's body clock. It works on a 24-hour basis. And if we can actually get outside into natural light, or if you're not able to get outside, even sitting by a window, try open the window for some fresh air, but let natural light hit your eyeballs directly for 5 to 15 minutes, or as early in the day as you can. That actually will impact your sleep for the following night. I think we forget that.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I do love the idea of just going outside if you can and just observing daylight as it comes every morning, if possible. And if not, yeah, as you said, like open a window, open your curtains, and
Mm,
just sit there and say, like, I feel like one of the things that as I suppose, even as humanity in general, we could all do a bit better is not to get the phone first thing in the morning to
yeah,
check because you've waited 7, 8 hours. You can wait a little bit longer to get that phone. Go out there, get yourself a glass of water, a cup of tea, whatever it is that floats your boat.
mm,
Open that window, sit outside. Go for a walk around your house if you can, the green in front of your house, whatever it is. Just so you're like, body, I am waking up, and this is daytime.
yeah,
Here we go. I find that so, so brilliant.
yeah,
And again, as you said, if you live in an apartment or an area that, you don't have a park or whatnot, having those plants around you, even in your bedroom. I heard someone saying, oh, you shouldn't have plants in your bedroom. I have so many plants in my bedroom.
yeah,
I just feel like it's so lovely and adds that little life,
yeah.
isn't it, to the
Yeah.
room.
Yeah, it
So,
helps to
and
keep
then
the air clean as well.
exactly.
And we're talking about getting outside. If you can't, like there are green spaces, especially in Ireland. We're so, so lucky. Even in the
I
cities, there are parks and areas. I think that we are very lucky for that, and our councils are very aware of that too. So find your closest one and make it your mission this week to go and just sit on a bench and watch. Just watch the world go by for even 5 minutes. Like allow yourself 5 minutes. Put your phone on silent and just see what you see. It could be like it's such a lovely time for the birds, and the different calls of the birds in the morning. That is proven to reduce stress. Like we're all saying it. I'm so stressed. I'm so busy, but we have to choose. And as you said, schedule in these moments into our
Yeah,
day.
I
And
find that's really And you see, Liz, we're missing a very important point here is listening to the rain.
yes,
Like we have plenty of that.
yeah.
But
Yes,
it's such a soothing
yeah,
sound,
yeah,
just to sit there listening to rainfall, and we have plenty of that, let's be honest.
yeah,
So why not?
yeah,
But definitely my go-to tip here would be to schedule that moment.
yeah,
If it's first thing in the morning, if it's a lunchtime break, if it's both, if you can, if you're
yeah.
that lucky, but make some time for yourself in nature, outdoors, whenever you can.
Yeah, and I think start small, small goals as well. Say if you said to
Yeah.
yourself this week, every morning I'm going to get up, set my alarm 15 minutes earlier, straight on with the runners, have them sat by the door the night before, straight on with your exercise gear or whatever, out the door, raincoat if you need it, just get out there and 5 minutes, walk up the road, turn and come back. Like that's 10 minutes. And we all know that if we pick up that phone, we'll be sitting there for
Much
more
more than
than
that.
10 minutes scrolling. And as you said, you're just awake, your body's still half asleep, and we're looking at things on our phones, unfortunately, that are very disturbing at the moment in the world, like scary, sad, upsetting. And
Yeah.
it's very difficult for our bodies and our brains to deal with that. And it obviously is going to increase stress and anguish and so many emotions. So allow yourself, we need to have boundaries to protect ourselves as well and be able to deal with what we actually physically can deal with in our own environment first. So yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good thing to try and do. And at the end of the week, if you've achieved that, like celebrate it. Be really like do something you love and congratulate yourself.
And I think like my last point here would be around how you nourish your body and using nature as well to help you, I suppose, relax, feel better about yourself inside and out,
Yeah,
right? So if you're nourishing your body with the right foods from the morning, if you're trying to eat what's in season, what is more organic, if you have access to less pesticides, that sort of thing can only benefit yourself as well. Because of course, you can wake up early if you want, but if you're knocking back a milkshake and some chips, that's not ideal. So
yeah,
let's use nature to heal ourselves from the inside as well. I think that this is a good point,
yeah.
foods with less carbon footprint, and maybe a more plant-based alternative if you want to give it a go.
Yeah. Even just try
Really,
one day, as we said, meat free Monday, something like that.
exactly,
One day,
exactly.
see how you go.
And then, and heal from the inside, really important as well. You will feel better overall. You will feel better about how you're feeling, how you're looking, and whatnot. So
Yeah,
I feel like, again, as always, these conversations go, it's also connected,
yeah.
extremely connected.
Yeah. And then when we think about getting out into nature, it automatically promotes physical activity, which we know is also proven. Like people say, exercise is medicine, movement is medicine, but nature is medicine as well. And it's free from side effects, it's free, you
It's
know,
free.
yeah.
Yeah.
And, it only gives benefits. So, as we mentioned, from our sleep benefits, encouraging physical activity, whether it's walking, running, and stretching in the garden. But there's a kind of been a big discussion around things like grounding ourselves and earthing ourselves. Do you want to explain a bit about that?
Yeah. So grounding ourselves, you just take the shoes off if you're back from your walk, or if you just haven't woken up, you just woke up, get those socks off, go outside, try and step into nature, be in your garden, the sand, if you have access to that, whatever it is, but nature. And just stand there for a while, take a few moments for yourself, maybe do a little meditation, what are you grateful for? I love, one of the things that I'm always talking about, I have what I'm grateful for and what are my dragons that day. My dragons are what are my big challenges that I need to tackle. Yeah.
Hmm.
So, and I'm standing there just thinking of like these, I'm so grateful that I get to work. I get to do these things. Fantastic. And today I have to send a proposal to a client. I have to send a course to a college or whatever it is.
Yeah,
These are my big dragons and I will tackle them, no
yeah,
problem. And just gives me that like inner peace. I'm organizing my thoughts and then I'm going back inside for my breakfast, for shower, for work, or whatever it is, you know, feeling a little bit more like I'm in control. I can do this. I
yeah.
get to do this. And I find that very useful.
Brilliant, brilliant. So before we wrap this up, if you're going to encourage someone like little challenges, a daily challenge, and then maybe a weekly challenge, what would you suggest? And I would love if anyone listening or watching back later even just puts in the comments when we share it later what their daily practices are to connect them with nature.
I feel like, how do you eat an elephant, right? One bite at a time. Not that we're encouraging that. But I feel like from here onwards, if you could schedule, even if it's two little lunch breaks for yourself, yeah, to go for a walk, to sit in nature, to stand on the ground, bare feet, if you can, whatever it is that you're choosing to do, phone free, computer free, headphones off, just you, yourself, and nature.
Mhm.
Like as we said, it's free, it's easy, it's mostly accessible to everybody. So do that, schedule I feel like scheduling is a very powerful tool. The second thing I would say that's more, I suppose, bigger picture is really trying to figure it out. And again, I'm sounding like a broken record at this stage, but trying to figure out what are the real challenges when it comes to the environment for yourself. Oh, I buy online a lot. So I have a lot of packaging. I buy stuff that I don't need, or I throw out a lot of food away, or I have to travel with work a lot. What is it? What are your challenges that are unique to yourself and your family and your housemates or whatever it is that your world consists of?
Mhm.
And try and figure out, okay, I'm going to do one thing that's better this month to try and move this dial and
Mhm.
take control.
Yeah.
Just like when it comes to bigger picture, it's about taking control, but you can't control what you don't understand. So that's why I'm going back to what is your reality and where your challenge is coming from. And
Yeah.
then try and take control one bite at a time. Yeah.
Brilliant.
I find that these are my two tips.
Brilliant, brilliant. And I'll just add to that, if anyone is listening and they say, no, I've been very stressed lately, or low in energy, or low mood, or like my head is overstimulated, just the mental load is too much. The challenge for this week is to try and get out for a 10-minute walk, if you can, first thing in the morning or on your lunch break, and without your headphones, and see what you notice. But try to get to some green space, whether an area with trees or a park, and just get in there for even just 10 minutes and see how you feel. Try to do it consistently and reward and celebrate yourself after it, because you know I think you will feel the benefits. Like, it is scientifically proven to help with our mental clarity, help reduce rates of anxiety and depression, increase mood, reduce blood pressure, improve sleep, encourage physical activity. It's all the things. But another thing it does, if you get to a public green space, or like a community garden, somewhere like that, it actually can reduce loneliness, because you're suddenly around other people. Try make eye contact with others and say hello. Maybe there'll be people walking cute little dogs. You can stop and have a pet with them. It's just these little interactions, these small things that are a knock-on effect from you making that one decision of, I'm going to get out into nature. And I think that would be a great place to kind of leave this conversation today.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
Yeah. And if anybody wants to, continue the conversation about eco anxiety, as you mentioned, Friends of the Earth are a brilliant organization, and you just look them up online. They've got a website. You can subscribe to their emails, see what events they're running, speak to like-minded people, use your voice, start the conversation around the dinner table with your friends, your colleagues, your family, and hear people out. We don't want to guilt anybody, judge. This is a scary topic, so to feel overwhelmed is completely warranted. So we need to kind of come at it with compassion and gentleness, and because it's terrifying if you really just delve into it. And you can just go down a rabbit hole and only see bad news, and we're all doomed. And that is not what we want to leave people with today. We want to make people feel like, the best way is to take action, to alleviate anxiety is to take action.
Exactly. I
Yeah.
feel like is finding your tribe and
Yeah.
creating that collective, I suppose, impact.
Yeah.
That's really important.
And you can make a difference, and don't lose hope. We don't want to deny what's happening at the moment, but don't lose hope and come together, because there are amazing people out there doing brilliant work like yourself. And, we want to encourage that, and keep having these conversations.
Fabulous.
Yeah. And next week,
Brilliant.
if you'd like to join us again, we're back for our final episode of Healthy Planet, Healthy You, where we are going to be nailing recycling. And I think it's
That's
something,
it.
again, be an overwhelming topic, and you are the absolute expert on this. So yeah, it's
We'll
going.
see.
Yeah. So until next week, we hope to see you then, and have a great week in between.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.